Breaking tonight, horrifying new details in the Oklahoma beheading case, as charges of first-degree murder are announced today for the 30-year-old suspect. Police originally said Alton Nolan, who goes now by the name Yaquim Yisrael, entered the Vaughn Foods processing plant after being terminated. Now we learn that's not true. He was actually just suspended, according to the police. 54-year-old Colleen Hufford, a wife, mother, and grandmother, is the person he beheaded. This poor lady. Trace Gallagher live with the very latest tonight. Trace.
And Megan, between the statements by the district attorney and the police affidavit, we have a much clearer picture of this gruesome attack. The DA says Alton Nolan did confess to the beheading and to targeting his victims, including one of the women who complained to Human Resources about a statement that he made. The attack was also premeditated. The affidavit says Nolan went home, grabbed a large bladed knife, and came back to the food processing plant where he, quote, grabbed the first victim from behind and immediately began cutting her across the throat with a large knife with a back and forth sawing motion, all the while shouting Arabic statements. Here's the DA.
Obviously, there was some sort of infatuation with beheading. I mean, that's obvious from the Facebook post. So the manner in which it was carried out seems to be related to his interest in killing someone in that way.
The DA did not touch on Alton Nolan's call for jihad against America or his celebration of 9/11, saying only that any terrorism charges would come from the FBI, but he would likely seek the death penalty after consulting with the family of Colleen Hufford, the woman who was beheaded. Seen here for the first time with her husband, daughter, and granddaughter. Family and friends have now set up a Facebook tribute page for the woman they call a loyal mother, a doting grandmother, and one of the sweetest people ever. Hufford was just recovering from losing her home in last year's devastating tornado. Her husband picked her up from work every night, and he was waiting outside when he learned that she had been killed. Megan.
Oh, Trace, thank you. FBI officials say they have found no link to terrorism here yet and are so far calling this workplace violence. But that is not selling with a small group of Oklahoma lawmakers who just issued a statement reading in part, quote, the feds say this is a workplace violence, but people know that's not true. Harris Savar is the national spokesperson for Ahmadiyya Muslim Community USA. But first, we are joined by Oklahoma State Representative Lewis Moore, one of the lawmakers who signed off on that joint statement. Sir, good of you to be here tonight. And so why do you reject what the FBI is so far calling this as a case of workplace violence?
Megan, we believe that this was not workplace violence, but an act of terrorism, and it is something that, if it were an act of terrorism, that the federal government might get more involved with. So if we call it a murder, then our local law enforcement, who are quite capable, can handle the situation.
Do you think it's political correctness?
It definitely is political correctness.
Here's what the prosecutor said today. There's no indication that Nolan... No, I'm sorry, this is from the Washington Post, citing two federal law enforcement officials. No indication that Nolan was mimicking the recent beheadings carried out by ISIS. Do you believe that?
I can't see how this is anything but copycat killing. This is exactly what they want to do. It's an act of shock and horror designed to intimidate and terrorize the people of Oklahoma and the people of the United States.
All right, but they also said, this is from the prosecutor, the attack appeared to be about revenge for his suspension, not religion. Now, his suspension was because he was reportedly running around trying to convert people to Islam. They refused, so they suspended him. So he went home and got a knife and cut somebody's head off. And yet the prosecutor says the attack appeared to be about revenge, not religion. Your thoughts?
If it were anything other than religion, then he could have chosen many other ways to get his frustration across. You know, this is a fine company. They have ways, personnel manners, in which he could have gotten his point across and got this issue handled. He chose a way that was designed to terrorize the rest of us.
Sir, thank you for being here. Joining me now with more is Harris Safar. Harris, when you hear them say that there's no indication he was mimicking the recent beheadings carried out by the Islamic State, really, except for the pictures of beheadings on his Facebook page, accompanied by captions discussing the penchant of Islamic terrorists to behead their victims. Quote, "It is merely another precedent bestowed by the Prophet. I will instill terror into the hearts of the unbelievers. Smite ye above their necks." That suggests there may have been some connection in this guy's mind between beheading people and radical Islam, which he was trying to convert people to, and they objected, and then he got suspended.
Well, first, Megan, it's important to say that violence of any kind like this is abhorred, which is why we had wholly rejected this barbaric and inhumane act. Now, aside from the fact that the case does show, the DA and the prosecutors, that he was actually suspended for racist remarks, not for trying to convert people. Aside from that,
no, they have not ruled that out. That's not true. That's just an additional element. He didn't like whites, and he didn't like non-Muslims either. I'm just quoting the district attorney,
right? I'm just quoting the district attorney. But the Ahmadiyya Muslim community actually wholeheartedly agrees with Representative Frank Wolf that this case should be investigated to determine whether this man had any ties with organized terror movements. Now, investigating as terrorism is one thing.
Let's assume he didn't, but let me ask you that, because let's assume he didn't. We've been warned by the FBI for months now that you can have homegrown lone wolf terrorists who have no connection to an organized terror group who are nonetheless terrorists, radical Islamists. Do you disagree?
We've seen people that are self-radicalized, and so if the debate here is why is this not being called terrorism, the FBI has already published on their website the definition of terrorism, and you didn't bring me on here as a legal expert. You brought me on here as an expert in Islam, and so when we see people like Representative Moore, that's where there's the rub. Is there's one thing to investigate this as terrorism, which we agree should be investigated to determine, but there's quite another matter to say that this is, like Representative Moore has said, that this is a clear indication of something reflective of Sharia, and the Sharia should be preemptive or stopped or scrutinized. That's not a rational conclusion based off of the actions of this insane man who turned to violence.
Well,
so
I mean, this
if we're going to talk
insane
about
man
Sharia
was
law,
praising
like the
Sharia. The reason they went there is because this man praised Sharia all over his Facebook page, which has now been taken down, but we actually studied it at length, is jihad, jihad, jihad. America's wicked. It should be attacked. Sharia law is coming. The Statue of Liberty is going into flames. She and anybody who is with her. Islam will dominate the world. Freedom can go to hell. Pictures of beheadings. And then lo and behold, what does he do after he fails to convert people to Islam? He cuts off their heads. People think there might be a connection.
Well, there again, what we're trying to bring forth is you can talk about the actions of these lunatics, but anyone who says, like Representative Moore, that Sharia law is threatening America is not only ignorant on Sharia, they're ignorant of the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution is the most Sharia-oriented law in the world, and the U.S. Constitution also has a built-in mechanism that protects it from being usurped.
Under our U.S. Constitution, you can't stone a woman for adultery.
Class.
You can't bury her in the sand and then stone her to death by hitting her head
and
with
that's
rocks.
Not Sharia law. That's why you know us, Megan. You know that we are more than willing to talk about Sharia law, and that's not what Sharia is according to Islam, and we're more than happy to have that dialogue. But that is done under Sharia law.
Not only that, but stoning for adultery.
Well, what Sharia are we talking about? Every country has a different Sharia,
Megan.
So let's talk about this more.
I didn't say under all, but under some forms of the practice.
That's why I dedicated 3 chapters in my book talking about this.
The Centers for Disease Control tonight confirming the first case of Ebola diagnosed inside the U.S. He came in a plane into the U.S. and has it. We'll look at what that means.